My Little Avengers by Koolerkid. Chapter 9. Caramel, part-time farmer and full-time screw-up, looked down attentively at the piece of paper before him. I'm sorry, sir, said the receptionist on the other side of the desk, sounding very bored and not very sorry. The paper was Caramel's application to the Royal Guards. Princess Luna has stepped up recruitment to Equestria's closest equivalent to a military force in response to the current crisis. And even small towns like Ponyville had a recruitment office now. Stamped across the seat in bright red ink was a single word. Rejected. Below, in more red ink, was written, physically unfit for duty. Caramel wasn't terribly surprised, really. What was surprising was how much it hurt. After a lifetime of failure, you'd think he had gotten used to it by now. But the Royal Guards had been his last big shot at making something of himself. Predictably, he had been rejected. Caramel had no real skills to speak of. The kind Apple family let him work on their farm when they needed the extra help, and he did odd jobs around the town for sympathetic ponies. But every pony knew Caramel was unreliable. Even his special talent was useless. With a deep sigh, Caramel took the paper and stuffed it into a saddlebag, turning to go.
Wait just a moment, son.
Came a deep, masculine voice. Caramel turned to see a large stallion with a brown coat and jet black mane come from a side door. His cutie mark was a hard, heavy-looking shield, and Caramel realized his pony was probably a guard.
I'm Captain Bullrock of the Royal Guards,
the stallion said as he approached, confirming the smaller pony's suspicions.
I'd like to talk to you for a moment. Would you come into my office?
Silently, Caramel immediately followed Koolerkid to the office. Sitting on a cushion as Bullard went behind his desk.
Now then, Caramel, that is your name, correct?
Caramel nodded silently, nervously wondering what he was doing there.
And you were rejected for basically being unfit?
Another silent nod.
I see. What is your special talent, Mr. Caramel?
Caramel spoke.
Never give it up, sir,
he said timidly. What a useless talent that was. He had been so proud when he had gotten it. But what use was it when you failed at everything, no matter how many times you tried? Hey, I know of a guy in the universe who actually has that special talent, and trust me, he is not useless.
Dang straight.
Most special talents made it clear what career a pony would pursue, gave him a sense of direction and purpose. Caramel's did not. Starlight?
You better not be reading this. I know you're out there, Glimmer.
You can just call me Caramel. You don't need to call me a sir.
I see.
The captain was smiling. Did Caramel do something funny? Or stupid? He began to worry again.
Relax, son. You're not in trouble. Quite the opposite, in fact. Tell me something. Why did you decide to join the Guards? It's not a popular career choice, even with the current crisis. Most ponies would avoid it unless their special talents are especially well suited to it.
Caramel felt extremely uncomfortable, looking away from the captain. I've never been much good at, well, anything really. I thought maybe being in the Guards, if I did something important, I might finally be able to help some ponies.
Interesting. Helping other ponies is important to you, Caramel?
Of course! Caramel said, forgetting his nervousness for a moment. My whole life I just wanted to help, but it always goes wrong. He let out a heavy sigh. Oddly, Bulwark's smile seemed to grow larger.
He's a good colt, he thought to himself. Honest, passionate, and helpful. Life's beaten the confidence out of him, but I think I know how to give it back. Caramel, there's some pony I'd like you to meet. I think you're just the pony we've been looking for. I'm sorry, Mr. Troubleshoes, but we've already found a good applicant for our project. Just my luck. Professor, this is Caramel, our test subject.
Bulwark introduced Caramel to the light blue unicorn stallion, who looked up from his paper scattered on the desk. They were in his office at Celestia School for Gifted Unicorns, a building so fancy and high class that Caramel was feeling terribly out of place.
Caramel, this is Professor Gene Therapy, an expert in pony biology and the connection of magic to the physical body.
How do you do? The professor greeted, nodding his head at Caramel. Nervously, Caramel nodded back. I am quite pleased that some pony has accepted my offer to test my little experiment. How much did Bullock told you?
Not much,
Caramel admitted.
He said it was some kind of project to turn me into some kind of super pony.
Caramel's voice betrayed his doubts in the concept.
It sounded kind of weird, but The guards accepted my application. If this is the only way I can help Equestria, I'll do it.
Good, the professor said tearfully, coming out from behind the desk. Super Pony might be an oversimplified way of stating the concept, but it's essentially correct. I've long theorized that the possibility of magical mutation, altering both the physical and inner magic of a pony, to result in unique abilities. Sadly, my project rarely garnered much interest among my colleagues, and I never obtained much funding for experiments. Until recently, that is.
I accidentally Camelot last week. Caramel guessed. I mean, that's the kind of thing you're talking about, right? Magical mutation? That's what's happening to all these ponies who got these weird powers, isn't it?
Exactly, Professor said, grinning broadly. Follow me! He headed out the door down the hallway, Caramel and Bulwark following just a few steps behind. The Celestia event, as the newspapers are calling it, proved my theories valid. What's more, the current crisis in Equestria means that Her Highness Princess Luna is in search of exceptional ponies. She's quite interested in my research, and she wants to see if I can replicate her sister's incident. The professor took a left turn and led the other two down some stairs into the university's basement. You see, Celestia's uncontrolled explosion caused an uncontrolled mutation. I believe that a controlled exposure to a similar spell, or at least a simulation of it, since we have no alicorns on hand, Cadence hasn't been made yet, and Twilight hasn't descended, so they're dull too, will cause controlled mutation when performed under laboratory conditions. The professor led them to a large lab with more high-tech equipment than Caramel had seen in his entire life. Computers, wires, and machines which Caramel had no name for crowded the room. In the center was a large glass chamber on a raised platform. This is the lab where the experiments will be performed. The chamber there will be flooded with an appropriate simulation of the magical energy the princesses let off during the attack, carefully modulated only to enhance your natural magic, rather than alter it. The professor gestured to the glass chamber grandly as he spoke, and Caramel felt a vague, slipping sensation as he found the doctor harder and harder to follow. Sensing his distress, Bulwark stepped in.
What he's saying, son, is that this machine is going to supercharge your natural magic, toughen up your body so it can handle the strain. That's why you're so perfect. First of all, you're an elf pony. If we did this to a Pegasus or a unicorn, and they lost control of all that power, we had a serious situation on our hands. With an earth pony, your magic's all passive, helping plants grow, making you stronger and tougher. Second, not to put too fine a point on it, but your body is weak, and your magic reserves are low to begin with. A pony with average strength and magic could probably explode if we tried this on them. Bullock!
The professor and Moss, they'd hardly explode. You're frightening them. Dean sighed. I won't say there's no risk involved. There's a possibility your body will overreact to the magic and try to burn it off quickly. You could become ill, possibly even crippled permanently, and there is a small chance of death. Caramel swallowed nervously. However, the professor continued, even if this experiment fails and you don't undergo the change we want, the likelihood of you being injured at all is about the same as winning the lottery. Jean gave the nervous Colt what was likely meant to be a reassuring smile. I promise, I'll do my best to ensure you're not harmed.
What do you say, son? Bullard asked the smaller Colt. Now that you know the details of risk, do you want to go through with it?
Caramel thought for a few moments. He was terrified, frankly, of not what just could go wrong. Fiddling with the body of a pony, with his magic, its very soul, seemed more than a little dangerous to him. The thought that a pony could just be altered like that made his skin crawl. However, if he said no, then he never changed. He'd go back to Ponyville, still Caramel the failure, who couldn't bring himself to give up no matter how many times he messed up. Maybe this was exactly what he needed. The professor certainly seemed to know what he was doing after all. He couldn't waste this chance.
I'll do it!
It wasn't quite as easy as that, of course. It never was for Caramel. Firstly, Professor Gene Therapy wasn't ready to just fire up the rebirth machine, as he called it, right away. There was still a great many equations to equate, a number of formulae to formulate, and quite a few tests to test. Most of the specifics and technical jargon just went over Caramel's head, but from what he gathered, a number of variables in the project depended on the test subject. So, Gene Therapy had been unable to prepare them in advance. Caramel would have to undergo multiple physicals and wait until the professor did his professor things. Secondly, there was boot camp. Project Rebirth, named after the rebirth machine, was technically a military option. meant royal guards were in charge. They were quite adamant the untrained rookie would not be allowed to undergo the transformation into a single most powerful Earth pony in Equestria. Caramel found this to be a reasonable demand, and so demanded to undergo a compressed, month-long version of boot camp under Captain Bullrock. Hey, can Shining Armor be Tommy Lee Jones' character, and can Applejack be Peggy Carter? Just asking, since we're doing Captain America. Love that movie. Caramel discovered that despite his normally friendly demeanor and odd sense of humor, Bulwark was an exceedingly tough taskmaster. Still, Caramel didn't really mind. He was no stranger to hard work, and while this was many times tougher than working on Sweet Apple Acres, the principle was similar. Oh sure, he messed up. Many times in fact. Caramel had come to accept this as inevitable. Captain Bulwark reassured him that when he wasn't building Yolders, it didn't matter how many times he screwed up. The toughest part of boot camp, Bulwark said, was sticking it out. Or, in other words, not giving up. For the first time since he attained his QE mark, Caramel was proud of his special talent. It was a month later when Caramel stepped into Professor Steam Paravy's basement laboratory for a second time, though Caramel felt it had been much longer. In fact, he felt like a completely different pony now. He'd never be strong as, say, Big Mac, Captain Bulwark, or Shining Armor, not naturally at least, but he definitely put on some muscle. A much bigger change, though, was less visible. Caramel stood up straight, looked ponies in the eyes when he talked, and didn't stutter anymore. He was naturally sly, polite, and apologetic, but at least he didn't get the impression of a kicked puppy. Bulwark looked down with pride. He'd given Caramel the one thing he had been missing: confidence. He gave the younger pony a slap on the back.
You did good, son. You earned this.
Caramel smiled at the captain gratefully. It was the first time his hard work had earned him anything, besides a handful of bits, some sympathetic glances, a lot of bruises, and on one memorable occasion, a cutie mark. A flower, and a kiss from a cute filly a year older than him. But there'd be time for reminiscing later. Right now, the rebirth machine was warming up, and it was time to get ready. Professor Jean Paravy and a gang of at least 10 unfamiliar assistants hurried about the lab, making things quite crowded as they made last-minute changes and preparations. Finally, one of the assistants, a bright green unicorn stallion with a serious expression, came up to Caramel. This way, please, Mr. Caramel.
That's Private Caramel.
Bulwark interrupted sternly. Caramel felt a bit of pride. Private was a low rank, to be sure, but it was his rank. He earned it. That was important.
Of course,
the assistant said sourly, wearing an expression that clearly said, I don't get paid enough for this.
Come with me, please. Private Caramel, we are ready for you.
Caramel followed him to the glass chamber that was the rebirth machine, stepping inside without the hesitation that had plagued him a mere month before. He had been allowed to wear his new uniform, however, much as he wanted to. But they let him keep his new hat. It was just a small beret with the sun and moon emblem of Equestria on it, and a few guards ever wore it. They preferred their helmets, but Caramel liked it, so he had the special seal that had been made for him. A thought made him positively giddy. It was a small round thing, colored in the red and orange of Equestria's flag, and a much larger the sun and moon symbol in the center. It was strapped to his right foreleg. It fit very snugly, angled just right to avoid hitting him when he moved. It had been especially made by some of the best unicorns in the school to be nigh unbreakable. He didn't really need it for the experiment, of course, but brought it anyway. Wearing it felt right.
I'd like to know,
Professor James Parry said from outside the chamber. His voice sounded muffled as he closed the door to the chamber, but Caramel could still make out his words without much difficulty.
In just a moment, we'll be activating the magical emitters underneath the platform. The chamber you're in will get flooded with a controlled, diluted version of the magical explosion Celestia gave off during the counter attack. We'll be monitoring your magic levels the entire time from out here. If we notice any anomalous behavior, we'll shut it down immediately. Assuming everything goes according to plan, however, you should come out of this a brand new pony.
I already am a brand new pony, Professor, Caramel said with a smile. As far as I'm concerned, this is just a fancy touch. Fire up already!
Excellent.
Dean looked thrilled.
Glad you're so eager. We're just about ready to on this end. You'll just relax and we'll have you trotting out of here better than new.
Professor tried back to his work. Bulwark came to the chamber.
You okay in there, son?
A little nervous, Captain, Caramel admitted. I'm eager to get this over with. I've been looking forward to it all month.
I'll bet you have, Bulwark said with a grin. You come up with a code name yet? I hear the princess is pretty keen on those for her little team, and we're hoping to get you in as our first super pony.
I'm not sure, Caramel said with a shrug. I'm doing this for Equestria. I was thinking private Equestria since I'm a private. But that doesn't have the right ring. What do you think?
How about Captain Equestria? Bulwark asked. Might not be your official rank, but it sure as hate sounds better.
Captain Equestria. Caramel let down his shield. It was modeled after the equestrian flag, he thought. A symbol of his country. Maybe he could be a symbol too.
It does sound better. All right, Captain. If you could stand back.
The professor called from a nearby console.
We are about to begin. Good luck, son, Bulwark said as he stepped back. And here we go.
The professor said, his horn lighting up as he began manipulating the controls of his machine with magic. The chamber Caramel was in lit up with a soft white glow. Earth ponies couldn't normally sense magic, he knew, not like a unicorn. But the magic in that little chamber was so intense it made his coat inch. Still, it was rather soothing, like standing out there in the sun on a warm day. Possibly due to the device mimicking Celestia's magic, Caramel figured. Caramel didn't notice the changes at first. He visited a bit, adjusting his hat and shield, trying not to tat his hoof impatiently. After about a minute, though, he felt an intense moment of vertigo, and suddenly his body began to grow. He didn't suddenly become giant, but as he looked back at his body, he saw himself filling up with muscles that would make Big Mac jealous. If Big Mac ever got jealous. In fact, Caramel thought, looking down at his legs, he was probably the same as Macintosh was now. It felt good. Great, actually. Amazing, even. Caramel was so used to feeling weak, even after boot camp, that the sense of power that flooded into him now almost felt him overwhelming. He felt so strong. He almost felt scared to move, like the floor would break under his hooves.
Your magic levels are increasing perfectly. I think it's working!
The professor looked like a fool who had just been let loose in a candy store.
Young Caramel's body is reacting exactly as predicted, adapting to the increased magical levels right on schedule.
It was practically dancing in place.
Years of research validated, and I'm mitigating the triumph! Let's power this down and get us out of there, shall we?
The assistants all nodded, and started powering down the device, all except one. The light in the chamber started to dim, but Caramel was still having trouble seeing out. That's why he didn't notice the green unicorn assistant he had spoken to earlier, sneaking up behind Professor until it was too late.
Professor! Look out!
Caramel said. Bulwark turned, but it was too late.
Ah!
A sickly green flash from a traitor's horn, and a bolt of heresy impacted Professor Gene Therapy in the back. I always wanted to do a psych Hitler. The effects of the professor were immediate. His shouts of triumph turned to streaks of pain as his blue coat dulled to gray, his cutie mark fancy from his flank. He began deteriorating. His body shriveled up like a raisin, and his now spindly legs collapsed under his own weight. The unicorn screamed giving way to a dry, raspy sound before dying out completely. The professor's eyes dimmed as his head slumped forward, hitting the floor. The process took all of 5 seconds. Caramel caught sight of the familiar, snake-like sigil on the former assistant's forehead, just below the horn. As the murder turned tail and ran, the killer was a servant of Loki. Caramel was not by nature a violent or angry pony. He tried to be kind or helpful to every pony he met, never nursed regrets. But now, an unfamiliar rush of red-hot anger filled his body as he watched the green unicorn flee up the stairs. How could any pony just turn their backs on Equestria and the princesses like that? How could he just throw his lot in with a pony who tried to kill and enslave them all? What sort of pony did something like that? Everything was in slow motion. The fleeing pony was stretching lazily through the air as he left up the stairs, assisted by a small levitation charm. Bulwark was charging toward the stairs at a glacial pace. He'd never make it. The assistants were panicking. No pony quite knew what to do. Caramel's blood was pounding in his ears. An instinct took over. He leapt forward, smashing through the reinforced glass of the rebirth chamber like tissue paper. The moment his hind legs hit the floor, he kicked out with them, leaving small hoof-sized craters in the floor as he covered the length of the room with a single leap. Power surged through his body as he eased up the murderer up the stairs and into the halls of the university above. Caramel saw the incoming bolts of magic long before they hit him. With a reaction time that would make Rainbow Dash jealous, Caramel dodged the deadly green magic as the fleeing unicorn rounded the corner of ahead. Caramel continued to give chase, turning the corner to his quarry who took a shortcut through a window. Without bar to hesitate, Caramel followed.
"Help, murderer!"
Caramel said, with authority he never dreamed his voice could attain.
"You're under arrest for the murder of Professor Gene Therapy. Surrender now, you'll be given a fair trial!
Caramel wasn't certain where those words were coming from, but he sounded official. That point was made either way. The unicorn snarled at Caramel, but the reborn stallion could easily see his legs stalking over Celestia. He was an academic, not an athlete. He couldn't keep this up. You'll never take me alive, he said, his horn glowing with a sickly green light.
That can be arranged,
Caramel said solemnly, digging in his hose and raising his shield. Power floated up from the earth and up his legs, bringing it with a host of new sensations. He could feel the vibration from the unicorn's shaking legs, the unevenness of his breathing. He could feel the ponies walking around Canterlot. They tried to fly about 10 feet away from a blade of grass. The sheer amount of information was almost overwhelming. But Caramel used the discipline boot camp taught him to block it all out, focusing attention on his enemy. They stared each other out for a moment. Suddenly the unicorn let loose a cry, fired a spell. It wasn't the killing blast of green that felled the professor, but a rush of light and sound that blinded and deafened Caramel. His new earth sense, however, told him the enemy was fleeing, and he used the spell as a distraction. Caramel's instincts had served him well so far, so when a strange idea crossed his mind, he didn't question it. He stabbed a hoof on the ground and gave a mental cry to stop him. A center of power went through him, and he felt an odd sensation through his ground sense. It wasn't until his vision cleared that he realized what he had done. The green unicorn was trapped in a tangle of vines and brambles that hadn't been there before. Help! The unicorn stuttered, struggling to escape.
Earthbound and magic,
Caramel whispered, a smile coming over his face. He'd done it. He stopped the traitor. He'd done something right. So wrapped up was he in mental celebration, he almost didn't notice as the unicorn's horn lit up with another spell. Almost. Caramel's shield snapped up just in time, its protective enchantments warring with the deadly green magic for a brief second before rebounding back at the caster. Caramel saw the unicorn's features twist into an expression of abject horror just before impact. His screams echoed endlessly at Caramel's ears as his body shriveled away, collapsing under its own weight. The plants entangling him withered as well, caught in the backlash of the spell. Caramel wasn't sure how long he stood there, staring at the corpse. The corpse he'd caused! This wasn't how it was supposed to go. He wanted to help ponies, not kill them. His entire body was overcome with shakes. He collapsed to the ground as tears leaked from his eyes. No, he whispered. No, 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 no. Son, you all right? Caramel dimly recognized Bulwark's voice. He turned to look to the concerned captain. I'll kill him, Caramel whispered. I didn't mean to, but I killed him. He tried to hit me with that spell. I blocked it. Didn't think it would bounce off. I was supposed to just catch him. This wasn't how it was supposed to go! Easy there, son. The captain laid a hoof on the captain's shoulder. Don't blame yourself. It was defense, right? Caramel nodded. Then you got nothing to be sad about. That sad waste of flesh there, he nodded at the corpse, was a traitor and a murderer. It's not worth getting upset about. From what I see, you did good. Really? Caramel felt the captain's words soothe away his panic, wiped away his tears as he clung to his hooves. Really? Now come on, son. We gotta report this to the princesses. Your country needs you. Captain Equestria. Princess Luna looked rather impressed as Cousin Bulwark completed his story. So the experiment was a success then, despite the interference? We couldn't have asked for a more perfect result. Captain smiled. Which is a darn good thing since the professor had committed most of the formula to memory rather than write down like a normal pony. Without those equations, the scientists in the school tell me they can't repeat the experiment. And without his special talent, they probably won't be able to figure it out again. Luna sighed. A pity. If your stories of what young Caramel are capable of is true, we could certainly use more like him. Her face hardened. Especially now. Loki's actions have caused the death of one of my subjects. This will not stand! I understand, Your Highness. Bulwark said. May I ask a question, Your Highness? Of course, Luna replied. Her anger suddenly dissipated. What is it? You're going to have Caramel join that team of yours, aren't you? Of course! Luna said with a slight look of puzzlement on her face. Is that a problem? Not at all, Bulwark chuckled. He'll be thrilled. Eager to please, that one. Just one little request I want to make, on his behalf. And that would be? Bulwark took a deep breath. I suggest he be called Captain Equestria, for a code name. I heard you were big on those, but see, he's not a captain, just a private. It's the kind of thing that matters to him, A smile across Luna's face. I see. In light of his heroic bravery and stopping the dangerous pony, who murdered a valuable asset to the royal family, I believe young Private Caramel is due for a promotion. Please tell Captain Caramel to come see me at noon tomorrow, would you? He should meet the rest of his team.
Of course, Princess, agreed Bulwark said with a bow as he left his room. I think he'd be more than happy to oblige.
And now, Avengers, assemble.